The sun was warm against my shoulders as I knelt in the rich Colorado soil, my hands deep in the earth, feeling the promise of new growth beneath my fingertips. Stan was beside me, his weathered hands working with practiced ease, his quiet chuckles punctuating the afternoon air. At 70, he moved with a confidence that made my 66-year-old heart skip unexpectedly. "You know, Vera," he said, his voice carrying that familiar warmth that had drawn me to these garden sessions weeks ago. "I think these tomatoes are going to be the best we've grown yet." I glanced up, catching his eyes, and felt something stir that had nothing to do with gardening. The way he looked at me, really looked, made me aware of the flush creeping up my neck, the way my breath had grown slightly uneven. His fingers brushed mine as we reached for the same tool, a simple touch that sent electricity through my skin. "Careful there," he murmured, his hand lingering just a moment longer than necessary. "Don't want you getting hurt." But the heat in his gaze suggested he was thinking about something entirely different from garden safety. Quick favor before we dive deeper. If you're enjoying where this is going, hit that like button and subscribe. Your support means everything, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the community garden as Stan and I finished our work, our hands dirty, our clothes damp with honest sweat. There was something about working the earth together that had awakened something I thought had been buried years ago. The way he moved, the gentle authority in his voice when he guided my hands to the right depth for planting, the occasional brush of his body against mine as we worked side by side, it all felt like a carefully orchestrated dance of attraction. "Tea?" he asked as we gathered our tools, his smile carrying an invitation that went beyond simple refreshment. His small cottage sat at the edge of the garden property, surrounded by the most beautiful flower beds I'd ever seen. "I'd love to show you what I've been working on in my private plot." I found myself nodding before I could think too carefully about what I was agreeing to. There was something magnetic about Stan, something that made me feel alive in ways I hadn't experienced in years. As we walked toward his cottage, I was acutely aware of his presence beside me, the way his hand occasionally touched the small of my back to guide me along the path, the warmth radiating from his body. His cottage was exactly what I'd expected. Cozy, lived in, filled with the scent of herbs, and something distinctly masculine that made my pulse quicken. "Sit," he said, gesturing toward a comfortable chair by the window that overlooked his private garden. "Let me take care of you for once." I watched him move around the small kitchen, noting the easy confidence in his movements, the way his hands, those same hands that had been so gentle with the plants, now prepared our tea with the same careful attention. When he brought me the steaming mug, his fingers brushed mine again, and this time neither of us pulled away. "You know," he said, settling into the chair across from me, "I've been looking forward to our garden sessions more than I probably should." His honesty caught me off guard, and I felt heat bloom in my chest. "There's something about working alongside you that makes everything feel different." The conversation flowed easily, moving from gardening to life, from past experiences to present desires. I found myself sharing things I hadn't talked about in years, the loneliness that had crept in after my husband's passing, the way I'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen as more than just someone's mother or grandmother. Stan listened with an intensity that made me feel like every word mattered. "Vera," he said quietly, setting down his empty mug and leaning forward, "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you're the most beautiful woman I've encountered in years." The compliment hit me like a warm wave, and I felt my cheeks flush. "Not just physically," he continued, "though you certainly are that, but the way you care for those plants, the way you laugh at my terrible jokes, the way you light up when you talk about something you're passionate about. It's incredible." Before I could second-guess myself, I found myself moving toward him, drawn by an attraction that felt both comfortable and thrilling. "Stan," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I haven't felt this way in so long." His hands found my face, gentle but sure, and when he leaned in to kiss me, it felt like coming home and embarking on an adventure all at once. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, but when I responded, really responded, it deepened into something that made my entire body come alive. "Are you sure?" he asked against my lips, his breath warm and inviting. I answered by kissing him again, this time with a passion that surprised us both. His hands moved to my waist, pulling me closer, and I could feel the strength in his arms, the steadiness that had first attracted me to him in the garden. The transition to his bedroom happened naturally, without the awkwardness I might have expected. Stan took his time, his hands exploring with the same careful attention he gave to his plants, patient, thorough, reverent. When he helped me out of my gardening clothes, his touch was warm and appreciative, making me feel beautiful, in my own skin in ways I'd forgotten were possible. "You're stunning," he murmured, his lips tracing a path along my collarbone that made me gasp. "Absolutely stunning." His words were like medicine for a part of my soul I hadn't realized was wounded, and I found myself responding with an eagerness that felt both familiar and brand new. The way he touched me, slow, deliberate, with complete focus on my pleasure, reminded me why physical connection had once been such an important part of my life. His hands mapped every curve with appreciation, his lips following paths that sent shivers through my entire body. When I arched beneath him, my breath catching in ways that felt almost forgotten, he smiled against my skin. "Let me take care of you," he whispered, and I surrendered to his touch completely. The sensations built slowly, like the careful cultivation of a garden, each touch building on the last until I was lost in waves of warmth that seemed to radiate from my core outward. My fingers gripped his shoulders as the tension coiled tighter, my body responding to his careful attention with an intensity that took my breath away. When the release came, it crashed over me in waves that left me trembling against him, my voice breaking as I called his name. He held me through it, his own breathing uneven, his body tense with his own need. "Your turn," I whispered, my hands already exploring the solid warmth of his chest. Stan's response to my touch was everything I could have hoped for, passionate, grateful, completely present. When I took the lead, exploring his body with the same careful attention he'd shown me, his reactions were beautifully honest. His breath quickened under my ministrations, his hands tangling in my hair as I showed him just how much I'd missed this kind of intimate connection. The rhythm we found together was perfect, not rushed, not hesitant, but filled with the kind of mutual appreciation that only comes with experience and genuine attraction. When I moved with him, our bodies finding a harmony that felt both natural and thrilling, every motion sent sparks through my nervous system. The way he looked at me, with desire, yes, but also with genuine affection, made me feel more alive than I had in years. "Vera," he breathed, his hands steady on my hips as we moved together, "you're incredible." The words fueled something deep inside me, and I let myself get lost in the sensations, in the way our bodies communicated without words, in the building tension that seemed to encompass my entire being. When my second peak approached, it built more slowly, but with even greater intensity. Stan seemed to sense it, his movements becoming more focused, more deliberate, until I was crying out again, my body shaking with the force of my response. This time, he followed me over the edge, his own release powerful and complete as he held me close. We lay together afterward, our breathing gradually returning to normal, our skin warm and slightly damp from our efforts. The late afternoon light filtered through his bedroom window, casting everything in a golden glow that felt almost magical. "I can't believe this happened," I said, tracing patterns on his chest with my fingertips. "I mean, I hoped, but I never imagined that it would be this good," he finished, pressing a kiss to the top of my head. "Vera, this is just the beginning if you want it to be. I've been thinking about you like this for weeks." The confession sent another wave of warmth through me, and I realized that this wasn't just about physical attraction. There was genuine connection here, the kind that could grow into something beautiful with the right care and attention. The next morning, I practically floated into the community garden, my entire body still humming with the memory of Stan's touch. Dot, my closest friend among the gardening group, took one look at me and grinned knowingly. Well, she said, setting down her watering can with a mischievous smile. "Someone certainly looks like they had an interesting evening. That glow isn't from any skincare routine I've heard of." I felt heat creep up my neck, but I couldn't stop smiling. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, but my voice betrayed me completely. Dot hummed, moving closer with the kind of conspiratorial energy that only comes from decades of friendship. "Vera, honey, you look like a woman who's been thoroughly appreciated, and given that certain someone has been making eyes at you for weeks." She glanced towards Stan's usual plot, where he was already working, and I caught him looking our way with a smile that made my pulse quicken all over again. "Dot," I whispered, unable to keep the joy out of my voice any longer. It was incredible. I'd forgotten what it felt like to be wanted like that, to feel so alive in my own skin. "Tell me everything," she demanded, linking her arm through mine, as we walked toward our assigned section. "And don't leave out any of the good parts." As I shared the highlights with my friend, I found myself reliving every moment, the way Stan's hands had felt on my skin, the careful attention he'd paid to my pleasure, the way he'd made me feel beautiful and desired. Dot listened with the enthusiasm of someone living vicariously through a friend's romantic adventure. "Good for you," she said when I finished, squeezing my arm affectionately. "You deserve all of that and more. And judging by the way he keeps glancing over here, I'd say last night was just the beginning." The morning passed in a haze of shared glances and subtle touches whenever Stan and I crossed paths. The sexual tension from the previous day had been replaced by something deeper, an intimacy that made even the simplest interactions feel charged with meaning. When he helped me lift a heavy bag of soil, his hands lingered on mine. When I passed him a tool, our fingers brushed deliberately. By lunchtime, I found myself practically vibrating with anticipation. Stan approached our group with his usual, easy smile, but there was something in his eyes that was meant just for me. "Ladies," he said, tipping his hat to Dot and the others, "beautiful day for gardening, isn't it?" His gaze settled on me, and I felt that familiar flutter in my stomach. "Vera, could I steal you for a moment? I wanted to show you something in the greenhouse." Dot practically pushed me toward him, her eyes dancing with mischief. "Go on," she whispered. "Don't keep the man waiting." The greenhouse was warm and humid, filled with the scent of growing things and the promise of future harvests. But the moment the door closed behind us, the plants became secondary to the electricity crackling between Stan and me. "I couldn't stop thinking about last night," he said, stepping closer until I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "About you, about us, about how perfect everything felt." "Me neither," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I keep replaying every moment, every touch." His hands found my waist, pulling me closer until there was barely any space between us. "I want to do it again," he said, his lips brushing against my ear in a way that sent shivers down my spine. "Tonight, tomorrow, as often as you'll let me." The kiss that followed was different from the ones we'd shared the night before, hungrier, more confident, filled with the knowledge of how good we could be together. My hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer as his mouth moved against mine with increasing intensity. "Stan," I breathed against his lips, feeling bold and desired and completely alive. Yes, yes to all of it. When we finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, he smiled at me with a mixture of satisfaction and anticipation that made my knees weak. "Good," he said, his thumb tracing my lower lip in a gesture that was both tender and possessive. "Because I have so many plans for you." The promise in his voice sent heat pooling low in my belly, and I realized that this garden had given me something far more valuable than tomatoes and herbs. It had given me back a part of myself I'd thought was lost forever. That evening, as I prepared for another night at Stan's cottage, I caught sight of myself in the mirror and was startled by what I saw. The woman looking back at me had bright eyes, flushed cheeks, and a smile that spoke of secret pleasures and anticipated delights. I looked like a woman who was thoroughly loved and completely satisfied. And as I made my way through the garden, toward Stan's waiting arms, I couldn't help but think that sometimes the most beautiful things grow in the most unexpected places. Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it, doesn't it? Sometimes the most profound connections bloom from the simplest shared moments: an afternoon in the garden, a cup of tea, the courage to reach for what makes us feel alive. Have you ever found passion in an unexpected place? What would you do if someone made you feel truly seen and desired again? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I love hearing your stories. And if this resonated with you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more. Hit that notification bell so you never miss these intimate moments we share together. Until next time, keep your heart open to possibility.